This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. The holidays are over, the decorations are down, and suddenly everything feels a little empty. It's normal to feel the winter blues after the holiday excitement. January, February, and March are by far my least favorite months of the year. It's cold and dark, and I have to get some extra vitamin D on board. I also need to keep my regular scheduled appointments with my therapist. So if you're feeling that post-holiday funk, I definitely suggest you checking out BetterHelp because maybe it's time to talk. You might also be one of those people like me who makes New Year's resolutions and you get super motivated. So maybe you need someone behind you to hold you accountable and come up with a plan to meet your goals. BetterHelp is super convenient, totally online. You have a therapist right at your fingertips whenever you need them. So head over to betterhelp.com/wifeofcrime1 to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/wifeofcrime1 for 10% off your first month. So Russ, I have a question for you. Does money and privilege buy innocence? The case I'm going to tell you about today is a prime example of money and privilege manipulating an entire system, whether they intended to or not. This is the case of the murder of Martha Moxley. Everyone, welcome back to Wife of Crime, a true crime podcast where I tell Russ all my favorite true crime stories and he reacts to them.
I do.
This is Russ.
That was Jess. This is Russ.
I was saying this is Russ to the boys because you just said I do.
That would be a that's Russ.
Whatever.
Hey.
So I have a couple things to talk about before we get into this story. Number one, my prank caller called me back, peeps, and it was creepy. Her name is Bella, apparently, and she kept telling me that she never called me and that I'm a weirdo.
Did you tell her to listen to the podcast?
No.
You should have.
She called me a weirdo and then hung up the phone. I'm the weirdo. She called me 5 times, people, but I'm the weirdo. Anyway.
It's a friend.
It was kind of funny. Also, we're coming out with this episode a little bit late this week because we've had work and, you know, things we get paid for.
Yeah, I've been getting my ass kicked at work. I work like 8 days a week and stuff. So I just got to keep going to work. But I tell people at work about the podcast. Shout out to them if they listen, but probably not.
I'm sure some of them do.
What's up?
Also, another thing to talk about. We put up a video on Instagram saying that if you have any case suggestions, you can feel free to DM us on Instagram or you can email us at wifeofcrimepod@gmail.com.
That's too much. Just do the Instagram.
Yeah, they can do either one.
All right.
Because sometimes I have a really hard time picking what episode I want to do the next week. I don't know why, but it creates a lot of anxiety for me to pick. I always want to pick the perfect episode. So if you guys have an idea of a case that you want me to research and you want to hear our opinions on, definitely email me.
I mean, someone has been asking for the Iceman for a very long time.
Someone has.
And you refuse to do it.
It's not that I refuse to do it. I just feel like the Iceman has been done many times. But you know what? Now that you've mentioned it, I'll do it. Paul, I'll do the Iceman for you.
Coming soon.
It's coming.
It's our friend with the muscles. He used to have muscles. He's getting a little chubby now.
So, Paul, I'll do the Iceman for you. What other thing did I want to... Oh, yeah.
Shout out to my girl Marisol on Instagram. # we like Russ. # Jess the hater.
She did.
Yes. You're the best. It's happening.
She did
Jess was like, what the hell? She laughed, but It wasn't that funny to her. I appreciate it.
She did hashtag that. That was really funny. And so did my mom, Carrie. Carrie hashtagged it too. Hashtag
Your mom.
My mom loves me better than you anyway, so it doesn't matter.
I don't know. She loves you more, but she thinks I'm cooler.
Maybe. I doubt it though. Okay, so another thing I wanted. Oh yeah. So guys.
Oh, we got a hater.
We do have a hater.
And it's not Jess.
Someone commented 13 comments of hate on one of our episodes.
We're not gonna go into it because they were a kook. It was like it wasn't like a sentence or two. They basically just didn't like our opinion, but I thought it was dope that they listened. So shout out to the hater. If you listen again, your haircut was funny. There's a picture of the haircut.
Shout out to the hater. We respect your opinion, but we don't agree.
I don't respect anyone's opinion.
13 comments. It's a little excessive.
No, it looked like a copy and paste, and they do it on every one of that case, and they put it on everyone's. They're just...
Pretty much they just hated the Satanic Panic episode because they didn't agree with us. But that's fine. You don't have to agree.
You don't have to, but if you don't, you're stupid. Because I haven't been wrong since 1996.
Oh, God. So, and then last thing is, Russell, what other podcasts do you listen to?
I used to listen to a lot, but I don't know. I get bored fast. I listen to the Mike Tyson podcast, Hot Boxing, depending on who the guest he has on. And then I like Joe Rogan, depending on the guest he has on.
Yeah, that's true. I like both of those as well, but depending on the guest they have on.
And I used to listen to Crime Junkie a lot, but I don't know. I get a little bored. Nothing against them. It's a good podcast. I just get bored fast.
Yeah, I love Crime Junkie. But I found a new true crime podcast called Red Handed, and it's two British girls. So I love their accent.
They probably sound hot.
Their accent's really nice. I really like listening to it because of their accent, to be honest.
British people can't sound mad. It's so weird.
I just love listening to all their like British slang. But anyway, they do a really good job on their podcast and covering cases from all over the world. But I really like their accent. It kind of like it's a change of pace from other true crime podcasts that I listen to.
So it's like polite killings.
I mean, they're not that polite. They still cuss and
tea and killings.
Say they still like make fun of things. It's pretty funny. It's a really good podcast. So check it out.
You should. I probably won't, but everyone else, if you like a lot of podcasts, listen to that.
Yeah, it's a good one. It really is. Okay, so we're going to get into this story finally. It's a really interesting case. It's an older one. It's from 1975. But the thing about this case that was really interesting is that it's still, well, up until 2016, it was pretty much still happening. Like there was a lot of stuff still going on about it. So I thought it was a really good one to do. Oxygen did a 4-part series on this case, but I didn't watch the 4-part series. So now I would be interested to watch it now that I've done all this research on it and kind of see what the conclusion that Oxygen channel made about it. But it's the murder of Martha Moxley.
You know what's crazy? Is I know now I'm going to have to watch that. You're going to be like, we did the podcast. Now we have to watch it together.
We should. I mean, it would be cool. Why
That's
not?
Jess's voice.
We should definitely... That's the way you do my voice. That's true.
Yeah.
So anyway, this is the murder of Martha Moxley, and there's not a lot of podcasts that have been done about this case, but it's very interesting because the two main suspects are part of a family that is related to the Kennedys, and that's what makes this case pretty interesting. So this murder takes place in Greenwich, Connecticut, and if anybody knows about Greenwich, Connecticut, you know that it is a very rich community. There's a lot of money there, a lot of really, millionaires and billionaires. They work in the city, like hedge fund people and accountants and stuff, and then they live in Greenwich, Connecticut. And there's a lot of mansions. It's beautiful.
As your dad would say, yuppies.
Very yuppie, but even more than yuppie. Like these people are rich. We'd probably be considered yuppies, you and I, to my dad.
Oh, because I am not rich.
No, we're yuppies.
I go to work every damn day.
Yuppies work too.
Pay these damn mortgages.
I think my dad would probably consider us yuppies. But these are rich
his
people.
house costs more than ours. He's the yuppie. You hear this, Chuck? You're the yuppie.
So anyway, this case took place in Greenwich, Connecticut, which is like a really rich part of Connecticut with $1 million mansions.
Row homes in the Bronx are $1 million now.
True, but these are like these are multi-million-dollar mansions, and they're huge.
Like 50 Cent, the one he bought from Mike Tyson. It's in Connecticut. I don't know what part.
I have no idea, but probably.
Okay.
So this happened, like I said, in 1975. Martha Moxley and her family moved to Greenwich from California about a year before Martha was murdered.
How old was she?
She was 15.
Oh, damn.
So she was a sweet, beautiful, blonde-haired girl. She, even though she was new to the community, she was like automatically popular with the kids. Everyone liked her. She was very friendly, and no one had anything bad to say about her. She was even voted the girl with the best personality after only being in her high school for a year.
Sounds a little too bubbly for me, but...
Well, no, she was very nice.
I don't like nice people.
You're so weird. So she lived in a gated community called Bellhaven, and this community had like a guard area in the front. It was gated with a guard, and then they also had patrol people who would ride all through the community and make sure that it was safe.
Okay.
Like I said, it was multi-million-dollar homes and mansions, and they never had crime. It was just crime just didn't exist there. Because of the fact that it was gated and there was security riding all around, there was no crime.
Reminds me of a movie. When I think of the name, I'll get back to you. I might interrupt you mid-podcast, I'm thinking.
Probably. You usually interrupt me. So David Moxley was her dad, and he was a partner at a very large accounting firm. That's why they could afford to live there. It was an accounting firm in New York City called Touche, Russ & Co. And he was a partner there and made a ton of money. So her next door neighbors were the ones I told you about before. They were the Skakel family, and the Skakel family were related to the Kennedys, which we know is like an American dynasty at this point.
I don't really know much about them except like...
Well, you know about
the
JFK.
president was killed. Then they had the dude in New York that got killed in the airplane. He used to hang out at Central Park with his shirt off and stuff.
I have no idea what you're talking
The dude, what was the other Kennedy in New York that the girls thought was handsome? His hair was a little fluffy.
Yeah, he was the
He got killed in the airplane.
JFK Jr.
Oh, there you go.
Well, then there's also Robert Kennedy. So the way the Skakels were related to the Kennedys was Rushton Skakel was Ethel Kennedy's brother, and Ethel Kennedy married Robert Kennedy. Robert Kennedy was the second Kennedy to be assassinated. So JFK was
There were more Kennedys assassinated than one?
There was, yeah.
Why do they keep wiping them out?
So JFK was assassinated in 1960.
Because he was president and they didn't like what he did, blah, blah, blah.
Okay, let me finish my sentence. JFK was assassinated in 1963, and then his brother, Robert Kennedy, ran for president in 1968, and while he was running for president, he was assassinated in 1968.
Shit. Is it because he had the same ideas?
I'm sure it had something to do with the fact that, I mean, I didn't read the conspiracy of why the Kennedys have been assassinated, but I'm sure it was because he probably had similar ideas. They were both Democratic candidate. Well, he was a Democratic president. He was a Democratic candidate,
right.
You know.
I got you on a whole nother podcast.
So the Skakels had 7 children, but they had 2 boys that were Martha's age, Tommy and Michael Skakel. Martha would hang out with Tommy and Michael, but she would hang out with them in a group because there was like a huge group of teenagers from the neighborhood. They all hung together all the time. So both 17-year-old Tommy and 15-year-old Michael had a crush on her. These boys had a reputation for being a little wild and unruly, and they also got away with a lot of stuff because they were related to the Kennedys. So, you know, people kind of turned the other way when they were acting up.
Okay.
Their father would take frequent business trips, so the boys were often left with a live-in tutor, quote unquote, / nanny, but he was a guy. His name was Timothy Pinkerton. And
a man could be a nanny?
Well, yeah, he was like a live-in tutor.
Is it a manny instead of a nanny?
I guess it would be called a manny, yeah.
Did I just make that up?
No, that's a term.
Oh, I'm smart.
So, okay. So now you know a little background. I'm going to tell you about the actual crime. So on October 30th, 1975, which I don't know if they do this here, but where I come from, we call it moving night or mischief night.
Where you going?
It's when teenagers go out the night before Halloween and they egg people's houses and they TP people's houses.
Moving? Where you going?
Either moving or mischief. Where I come from, they called it moving night.
But that's like when you get a new apartment.
It doesn't matter what you think. That's what they called it where I come from when I was a kid. We called it moving night.
Never. We don't do the day before in New York. We do the day of.
You go around and TP. That's not true.
No, we don't do TP. You do eggs. And when I was a kid, sometimes people would do batteries in a sock and bong you on the head.
That's terrible.
Welcome to the Bronx.
No, they didn't. You're so full of crap.
Well, sometimes we did do this. The big things of chalk, we would break them up a little bit. And there would be chalk, but there'll be some hard parts in there too. And you get hit right in the head. And that joint would hurt.
With chalk.
And it'd be a lump. And your ears would ring.
Well, whatever.
But really, we should have did powder in the sock like Homie the Clown. I don't know why we didn't just do powder instead of breaking the chalk. Whose idea was this?
I have no idea. Well, whatever you call it, the day before Halloween, a bunch of teenagers, they go out with eggs and soap and TP and shaving cream, and they just like...
TP.
Well, we did. We used to TP people's houses and stuff like that.
You guys probably thought you were so cool.
I did. I thought I was so cool. So Martha and a group of friends asked Martha's mom if they could all go out and hang out for the night for a few hours. But Martha was grounded. So at first her mom was like, no, you're not going out. You're grounded. You're in trouble. That's it. But her friends kept asking her mom, please let Martha out. Let Martha out. And finally her mom was like, okay, but you have to be back by 11 p.m.
How were these kids even in the house to ask the mom, can the kid come out if the kid was grounded?
They came over to get her.
Who negotiates with terrorists? Kids are terrorists. I do not. Come outside. Get your little ass out my house before you get hit.
Well, her mom was a little softer than you. And
do not negotiate with terrorists.
She gave in and she said, nope. She said, yes, you can go out, but you have to be back by 11 p.m.
If I ever have a kid, which I probably won't because they're always sticky and they always run. But if their friends came over and tried to unpunish them, I'm going to hit them.
Well, Martha's mom did not. And she let her go out at 11, as long as she came back by 11 p.m.
Rich kids probably don't get hit. That's probably why.
That's probably true.
They'd be shocked. You probably could pluck them in the forehead. They would get knocked out.
So around 11, Martha's older brother, John, comes home. Because Martha's brother had to be home at 11 too. Her mom was just like, you guys can both go out with your friends. You both have to be home at 11. So John came home, but Martha didn't. And at this time, her mom just gets annoyed because she's like, I tried giving her a chance. She's still not listening, So she decides to wait for her in the TV room instead of going to sleep. She's like, I'm going to watch TV and wait up for her to get home. So while her mom's watching TV, she ends up falling asleep, unfortunately, and doesn't wake up until 2:30 in the morning. And when she wakes up, she realizes her daughter's not home. And now her mom's getting worried. So she starts calling neighbors, friends of Martha, her friends, and asking, has anyone seen her? One of Martha's friends said that she last saw her at the Skakel home right next door. Because, these boys live next door. I mean, when we say next door, you have to understand it's still a little ways away because these are mansions. So they're not directly next door to each other.
There's probably a couple guest housed in between.
I mean, there's a good amount of space in between, but you can see the other house from her house.
With binoculars.
So she calls the Skakel house and asks about Martha, but they said, no, she's not here anymore. Her brother John got in his car and he started driving around the neighborhood looking for her, but he couldn't find anything. At 3:45 a.m., Martha's mother calls police and an officer arrives a few minutes later because, this community is already being patrolled by the Greenwich police. So when they call the police, right, someone comes right away. So within a few minutes, a police officer showed up and he started searching the house and started searching all around the house and he saw nothing. A few hours into the morning of Halloween, The whole neighborhood already knew what was going on because this is a small community and there is, like I said, literally no crime there. And there's that private security firm and the gates. So if one person goes missing, everyone finds out about it. So everyone knows and they all start coming outside and looking for Martha. And people end up going to her house and, asking her mom, okay, where should we look first? The community kind of comes together to try to find this girl. So one of the ladies who walks over to the house, her name is Sheila McGuire, and she ends up cutting across the back part of the property, like through the backyard. And when she does, she sees the body of Martha Moxley.
In her own yard?
In her own yard, lying under a pine tree.
I don't even know if I would... if someone was missing, I don't even think I'd look in my own yard. I guess you would just in case, they passed out of a heart attack or, I don't know, they were drunk. But, you would think that...
It wouldn't be right there.
It wouldn't be in your yard. They would be...
far.
I don't know where, but not there.
Yeah. So Sheila sees this body. She becomes absolutely hysterical. She runs to the house. She tells Martha's mom, she's like, I see something under the tree. So a bunch of the neighbors told Martha's mom, we don't want you to see anything. Why don't you just wait here? We're going to go look and see if it's Martha, and we'll see if she's alive.
And she really waited?
She waited.
I couldn't wait.
So she was scared because she didn't want to see her daughter's dead body. I think she was just freaking out. She probably froze, to be honest. So she stood there, and these two neighbors went to see if this was Martha and if she was alive. And she wasn't. The scene was absolutely gruesome. Martha was laying on her side. Her pants and her panties were pulled down to her knees. She was completely covered in blood. There was blood everywhere. She had been beat to death with a golf club. And
a rich person did it.
A golf club was broken in half, and the half of the golf club was shoved through her neck.
Holy moly.
Yeah. And like I said, blood everywhere. She was beaten in the face so bad that she was completely unrecognizable. So
sometimes this is a tough lesson.
No, it was absolutely horrific.
That's terrible.
And the fact that she's 15 and she lives in the area where she does, where there's no crime like this. I mean, this was unheard of.
Next podcast, we're going to do an adult that got killed. I'm tired of kids getting killed. That's tough.
I know. All right. Well, I'll try to pick one that...
Not that adults don't matter, but if as opposed to me dying, as opposed to a kid, that's more sad.
Yeah.
In my head. I don't know if it is. All lives are the same, but...
No, you're right. It is sad. It's really sad. This case is really a shame, honestly.
Sorry if I put a downer on the podcast.
We did,
Jeez.
kind of. I mean, it's a downer podcast.
Can we edit this?
No.
All right, we're going to keep going.
We're going to keep going. So this is the thing, though. Greenwich Police Department, this was their first homicide investigation in 30 years.
Oh, so these dudes had no practice. They probably were shit.
No idea what they're doing. They're completely inexperienced. The police officer that first arrived on the scene...
That's like calling in the condo board association to do it. They're just clueless.
Well, they just had...
It's like Mr. Magoo. You know Mr. Magoo?
I mean, they're still police officers.
Mr. Magoo was a blind dude.
I know who Mr. Magoo is.
For the youngins.
But the police officers had absolutely no idea how to really secure a scene and do things right because they hadn't had the experience in dealing with a homicide before. So the police officer that arrived on the scene, he called the murder over a CB radio on an open channel, which was a huge mistake because the media heard it and it became a media frenzy. Everybody came to that house, and there were reporters and spectators within a 15-foot radius of this body.
What?
They didn't put caution tape up.
But isn't this private property?
I don't think the mother was that concerned at the point
of
with people being on her property. I think she was just in shock.
I don't know about the gun laws in Connecticut, but I would have shot the shit out of them.
Her dad was on a business trip, so it's just her mom and her 17-year-old brother dealing with this situation.
Yo, the 17-year-old brother had to step up. Stop being a rich little brat. Get everybody out that damn yard.
Yeah, but it's his sister. You don't even know what you would be like if anything
Oh,
happened to
I
your
know what
sister.
I would be like.
Okay.
They wouldn't have been in that yard, I'll tell you that.
But the police ultimately were responsible for securing the scene, and they didn't. So the whole entire scene was contaminated. The police called the Greenwich medical examiner, but he couldn't make it to the hospital until the next day. So he didn't end up being able to see the body until the following day, and he performed an autopsy, but the medical examiner never made it to the crime scene, which typically...
Is that protocol?
Yeah, they typically come to the crime scene because the point of the medical examiner is not only to perform an autopsy, but also to determine a window of when this death occurred so that they could make a timeline for the crime.
So you're telling me they didn't have backup doctors or whatever you call
Medical examiner, no.
They had one.
They had one.
And he was on vacation.
Well, no, he just couldn't get to the scene
on vacation
until the next day.
Your boy might have been drunk somewhere. He didn't know, like they didn't have one on call. Like, this is your not get drunk day.
They might have had one, but they didn't call them. The point is that only one examiner could come, and that examiner came the next day, so they couldn't make it to the crime scene. So this narrowed the window of death time to a 7.5 hour window, which is huge. 7.5 hours is a very long time. So they pretty much determined that she was killed between 9:30 p.m. and 5 a.m., which is a huge window, and a lot could have happened in that time.
Stupid.
Now, the biggest mistake, if you could imagine, because they've already made tons of mistakes, but the biggest mistake that the police made was that they refused to admit that this crime was committed by a member of this community. They didn't want to investigate the members of this community. They wanted to look outside.
I think that's dumb, but I wouldn't say it definitely was. They should investigate, right?
Yeah, they should investigate, but they're trying so hard to find an outsider that came in instead of investigating the people on the inside. Because this was a gated community. This isn't an easy community to get into. So they focused a lot on people outside the community for the first few days. There was apparently 2 teenagers from the Bronx that came to Connecticut and started like doing some stuff around the area. So police were focused on them, and they weren't really questioning kids in the direct area right away, which they should have been doing. But eventually they started questioning more and more people, and they finally put a timeline together for the night of October 30th. So I'm going to tell you what the timeline was that they put together. So Martha...
I don't know if I'm going to believe it because they're stupid.
Well, no, this has been a pretty proven timeline, okay?
Okay.
So Martha went out with 2 of her friends, prepared to egg and TP some houses, like I said, for mischief night. At approximately 9 p.m., Martha and her 2 friends went to the Skakel house next door. Okay. They all got into a Lincoln Town Car, and they sat in the driveway of the Skakel house. It was the 2 friends, Martha, and it was Tommy Skakel and Michael Skakel. They were all sitting in this town car listening to music, but they never left. They just stayed in the driveway.
Okay.
So Tommy and Michael Skakel were in the front seats, and they were like bench seats, so Martha was sitting between them.
How does anyone know this?
This is the 2 friends that were with her. This is after they questioned them.
Oh, the friend said this.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Tommy Skakel began flirting with Martha, and he even started putting his hand on her thigh, and she pushed it off. And then he did it again, and she pushed it off. She was not into him, and she was trying to make it clear that she didn't want his attention.
So what was she doing in the car?
Well, they were all friends, but he started flirting with her because he was drunk, and apparently they were smoking some weed or some hash or something, and they were all drinking, so he started being a little pushy, putting his hands on her, and she didn't like it.
Okay.
So she pushed his hands off her leg. So the friends noticed that Martha began getting a little uncomfortable. At around 9:15, the Skakel boys had a couple other brothers, because like I said, there were 7 of them that lived in this house. The other brothers were older, though, and these brothers came out of the house. Their names were John and Rushton Jr. They came to everybody in the car, and they were like, okay, you guys got to get out of this car. We're taking our cousin home, so we need the car now. You guys got to go. When they did that, Michael said, okay, I'll go on a ride with you guys. Martha, do you want to come with us? And she said, no, I'll stay here with my friends. So Martha, her two friends, and Tommy Skakel all get out of the car, and all the other boys left. They get in the car, they drive away. Now, Martha's two friends decide that they're going to go home. So they turn around and just start walking away. Now, this part weirds me out, okay? So her two friends leave her, walk away, and she's standing in the driveway next door to her house with Tommy Skakel and herself. And the friends say when they turned around, they saw Tommy push her on the ground. And the friends didn't come back. They just kept walking.
That's so...
How weird is that? If you saw your friend...
I almost feel like, are they telling the truth? Because...
Why would they lie about that?
Why wouldn't they... The same reason you can't believe that they didn't say anything.
No, but
what's weirder?
I think it's weirder that they would lie because it makes them sound like pieces of shit.
I think it's weirder that they didn't turn around and be like, what the fuck is going on?
That's what I'm saying. We're agreeing.
No, but I think they might be lying that happened. Wait.
Yeah, I'm
confusing myself.
You are. So they didn't turn around and say, hey, why did you push her? They just saw him push her.
I got my train of thought back.
Okay.
They might be saying that they saw him push her down because they want to pin it on him. Because if he really did that, wouldn't they have turned around and be like, get the hell off my friend, or I'm calling someone, even though they don't have a cell phone?
I don't know, but apparently they didn't. Apparently they saw him push her down, and then they just walked away.
Like, that's not my problem.
That's what they said when they talked to the police.
Where are these people? Let's look at their Facebooks.
I have no idea.
They're probably old.
So they saw Martha get pushed on the ground, but they continued to walk away, which is really crazy to me. I would never do that to my friend. They're not true friends. Tommy, of course, denies that this ever happened. Tommy claims that right after her friends left, he decided to go back in his house and work on a book report, and Martha walked home. That's what he says happened.
Nobody works on book reports on days off. What kind of nonsense is that?
Exactly. So he says that he had a book report due on Abraham Lincoln, so he needed to go.
That's the most... If somebody came up to me and said... And like I was making up a story, and they were like, "Russ, what you writing a book report on?" I'd be like, Abraham Lincoln." Get out! That's too stupid.
Well, that's what he said.
Guilty.
That's what he said.
And if you don't like this, my opinion, whoever wants to write another opinion on my opinion, I don't value your opinion. So take that. So
Tommy said that he had to go write a book report.
But I value your opinion if you agree with me.
So he left her between 9:45 and 10 p.m. That's what he claims. So also at this time, between 9:45 and 10 p.m., Martha's mother says that she heard a commotion outside of her house. But she assumed that since it's mischief night and a bunch of teenagers are out running around, she just assumed that there was a bunch of kids outside yelling and, she was hearing noise from that. So she didn't think anything of it at the time. Until after police questioned her, then she said,
it's too late.
Oh, around this time I heard this commotion outside my house. So at this point, Tommy Skakel is the prime suspect. To police, and honestly to me as well, it seems plausible because he has the opportunity. He was alone with her, and he has a motive. She kept rejecting him over and over and over again.
She hurt his pride.
And yeah, hurt his pride. So I can totally see why he's the prime
Little rich
suspect.
kids never get told no. They don't know how to deal with it.
That's probably true. So now they see a golf club so cops came to his house and they're searching the house, and not searching, but they're not actively searching. They don't have a search warrant, but they're in the house and they're questioning the boys. While the cops are there, they see a golf club with an insignia on it that says Tony Penna. And it was the same brand of golf clubs that was found at the scene. Forensic tests later confirmed that the two clubs were from the exact same set. Now,
you could buy box sets, but if you play golf and you're rich, you don't have a box set. You have a custom set normally.
And that's what this was.
Oh, that's it. It's over.
It's not over. Let me tell you more. So despite all of this evidence and circumstantial evidence, because they didn't have physical evidence. They had circumstantial evidence.
People have been convicted for much less.
Despite all of this, detectives looked elsewhere. They kept thinking outsiders came into the community. They kept trying to turn their heads. A grad student that lived next door on the other side of Martha, right? As the other neighbor on the other side, he was described as kind of a weird kid. And Martha's mom had mentioned that one day he made like some weird comments to them. So the cops really started investigating him hard. Okay, despite all this evidence they have against this kid, Tommy, they're ignoring that. They decide to go after this grad student, and they search his house like through and through, like really annoyed. Search it. And they investigate him, and they give him a polygraph, but he passes. And once they find nothing on this guy, they finally drop it. And they're like, okay, well, this is going nowhere. They finally are done with the grad student. Now, this is something I learned. I want to know if they were convicted.
We have to get to the end of this damn thing. It's driving me nuts.
No, you still have a little while to go.
How many pages?
4.
All right, we're in it, folks. Sit tight. Don't pick up your phone and search.
So back then, something that I learned when researching this case is back in the 70s in Connecticut, you couldn't just obtain a search warrant for someone's house without searching for something specific. So like in this case, they needed to find the handle of the golf club, because at the scene, the handle of the golf club was the only part of the golf club that was missing. So the cops have to search for this handle. So they can get a search warrant saying that they are searching a house for the handle, but they can't say we're getting a search warrant to search your house for evidence again in this crime.
But if they find other things, can they use it in court even though they weren't searching for it?
No.
What? So if I found her blood on a glove...
Back then, no, because you didn't have a search warrant for that evidence. You were only allowed to search for the thing that you had a search warrant for. It was very specific back then.
It was so easy to be a killer back then. You could have killed everybody.
It's true.
I could have killed all of Connecticut.
It's crazy.
The whole of Connecticut.
Now,
all of Greenwich.
This is going to make you so mad. It's going to make you so mad.
Kill everybody.
Are you ready?
I don't want to kill no one.
Okay, listen. This is going to make you really mad.
Maybe people that like
Russell, can I go on with the story?
All right.
This is going to make you really mad. Listen.
I don't want to be mad.
Now, like I said, they needed a search warrant. But since this was this family, police were too scared to obtain a search warrant for the handle of the golf club. So instead, they made a deal with the father of the 2 boys, and they agreed to allow their 18-year-old sister, Julie Skakel, to search the home for evidence. So the police didn't even search the home. They had their 18-year-old sister search the home for evidence in this case. That was their search of the Skakel home. I don't know if I'm mad.
I think the proper word is I'm befuddled.
It's crazy, right?
Good word.
Absolutely ridiculous.
That's so stupid.
Yeah. Now, initially, Rushton Skakel, which is the father of Tommy and Michael, right? Tommy and Michael's father, Rushton Skakel, was very cooperative with police. But this was until he found out that his son was a prime suspect. Once he found out that his son was a prime suspect, he decided not to cooperate anymore. There was no direct evidence, though, linking Tommy to this crime.
Besides the custom golf clubs.
Besides the golf clubs. But one thing that this is the issue with the golf club, is the golf clubs were in their backyard because they used to hit golf balls in their backyard all the time. The golf clubs weren't in the house. So the police justified it by saying any perpetrator could have picked up a golf club. It's just sitting outside their house.
That's true. But in a lot of other cases, people have been booked for less. They could be like, one time I saw them walk by golf clubs in 1984. It's true. You can convict someone if you want to,
but
or you could just say they're innocent.
Exactly. It's this family. Now, so police started looking at the tutor, the live-in Manny that I told you about, Timothy Pinkerton. They started looking at him because someone called in a tip claiming that he began acting very erratically.
Let me guess. It was the Schnitznitzers. What's their name again?
The Skakels.
Skakels. I don't know. I knew it was something with an S.
Skakels. So someone called...
It was the Skakels called them in, and they said, we got this man nanny in here, and it was him.
Well, he was acting very erratically. He started drinking really heavily, and detectives began investigating him because of this tip that someone called in. When the detectives walked up to him to question him one night, he was acting really dramatic and loud and started yelling, "I'm not saying anything that's going to implicate Tommy in this crime." Like, he just started yelling and acting crazy.
You know what I feel like I just heard? I'm not going to rat on Tommy that he did it.
So Tim Pinkerton failed his polygraph.
Who cares?
But no evidence linked him to the crime.
I'm anti-polygraph.
So at this point, now, we're into like 1976 at this point.
What year was the start?
This happened on Halloween of 1975.
Okay.
By 1976, this case went cold. And it stayed cold for 15 years. This poor family had to just hope that one day...
7, 8, 9, 91, 15 years later.
15 years later, okay. The Moxleys, they worked tirelessly, especially her mom. She just kept wanting her daughter's story in the media. She just kept wanting people to talk about it because she didn't want nothing to ever come of this. Like, she wanted to know. Her daughter got murdered on her own property. Like, can you imagine?
Today, they would have known who it was because most places have cameras now. You could buy
now that's true.
A Ring camera or something.
I know. So
everyone get cameras.
In spring of 1991, this case got more recognition because in the spring of 1991, another Kennedy cousin, William Kennedy Smith, who's a cousin, a separate cousin in the Kennedy family, he was accused of raping a woman in West Palm Beach.
So you know how they get away with this, the Kennedys? They're the Illuminati.
Well, they're not
They are.
Such a conspiracy. Like,
yeah, the Illuminati.
I mean, come on.
Don't come for me. I'm just Russ.
No, we're not going to go into this conspiracy crap. But the Kennedys are like a dynasty, and they've...
Not no more.
Well, whatever. So anyway,
It fizzled out.
William Kennedy Smith was accused of raping a woman in West Palm Beach.
Guilty.
And it was nationally televised. His trial was nationally televised, which caused the public to start talking about this. They're starting to talk about, like, why are the Kennedys getting away with all of these crimes? And
Illuminati.
then they start bringing up, these powerful families, and the media starts talking about why can these powerful families in our country pretty much get away with anything. Later on during the trial, sources said that he was visiting the Skakel family on October 30th, 1975, which was the day that Martha got murdered.
Wait, how old is this dude? Is he an old dude?
It doesn't matter because that ended up being proven false. But what it did do is it caused everybody to start talking about Martha's case again. And it caused pressure on the authorities to reopen the case. So a new forensic scientist was now, this is 15 years later, so the state of Connecticut...
Oh, technology is much better at this point, even though it still wasn't great.
The Connecticut DA hired a new forensic scientist named Dr. Henry Lee. And Dr. Henry Lee was a world-renowned DNA specialist. So he was working for the district attorney office. Yeah, the other dude probably went to the school of, what's that, the Arizona school? The internet school? The fake one? I don't know.
I'll think of it later and interrupt you.
Someone's literally yelling it at their radio right now or their phone right now.
Yeah, but there's no internet back then. But the other expert probably went to the equivalent. Well,
there wasn't an expert. They didn't have DNA back in 1975.
They didn't even have police officers in Greenwich in 1975. They had a bunch of top flight security from Friday.
Stop. So... This new forensic scientist was hired by the Connecticut district attorney.
They probably didn't even have guns.
And his name was Dr. Henry Lee. And he was...
You know what they remind me of?
Oh, my God. What?
The deputy from Scream. They were dumb like him.
Deputy Dewey? Was that
Deputy
his name?
Dumb Dewey.
Dewey, yeah.
Dumb. That's who they were. If you ever hear this, Greenwich people, don't give me a ticket.
They're never going to hear it.
When I drive through.
Right? No.
My name's not Russell.
So Dr. Henry Lee was a world-renowned DNA scientist, forensic scientist, who specialized in DNA research, and he was hired by the Connecticut District Attorney to process all of this DNA evidence. Rushton Skakel, Tommy and Michael's father, he got nervous because he was like, oh gosh, now they have this DNA specialist.
Now the truth will come out.
And now this case is opening back up. So he hired a really high-priced New York City detective agency to investigate the investigation. Like, he hired people to investigate the investigation so that he could get all the inside info of what the investigators are talking about. But this ended up backfiring on him because the agency discovered that both Tommy and Michael Skakel completely changed their story about that night. Numerous times.
So these investigators were good people?
Yeah, they found out. The investigators that Rushton hired said to him, your sons have changed their story 3 times. Like, this doesn't look good for them.
Did they tell the media?
Well, no, but it comes out. Just wait. Now, Tommy changed his story to say, listen to this. This is nuts. So Tommy changed his story to say that he...
It's only me and you here at this table.
I know, but this story is just crazy to me. So he changed his story to say that he was going to go inside and work on his book report.
On who?
On Abraham Lincoln.
He kept the Abraham. He's full of shit. It's the only president. If anyone says, what president can you think of? Besides like Trump now, because he's like in our head, it's all over. You'd be like, Abraham Lincoln.
Well, it turns out that police did question his teachers.
I want to see the report.
Well, they questioned his teachers about it, and there was never an assignment.
Duh!
Okay. So Tommy said...
He had less presidents to choose from in 1970-something, too.
That's true. So Tommy's story changed that he went inside to do his book report, but then he changed his mind, and he decided to come back out, and him and Martha had sex until 10 p.m. But autopsy found that Martha was still a virgin. Okay? So now Tommy changes his story again.
He's going to say, I have a little pecker.
No, and he says that they masturbated each other instead of having sex. Okay? Obviously, I don't know if you've caught on to this yet, but he's just saying that because he needs to have a reason to have his DNA at the scene.
Oh, I wasn't anticipating that. Normally, I'm profiled it up, but I had a little bit too much red wine.
So he has said now that first he said he had sex. Then they said, no, she was a virgin. Then he said, no, actually we masturbated. So it wasn't really sex because he needed his DNA at the scene because he knows his DNA is going to be found at the scene.
Because I lost my train of thought again. Keep going. I'll get it.
So for 2 decades now, Michael Skakel, the younger brother, had not even been considered a suspect at all. He had a corroborated alibi. He left with his cousins. Remember, he got in the car with his brothers and his cousin to drop his cousin off. He left. That was his alibi, that he was with them. He came home at 11:30 and he went to sleep. But now, 2 decades later, when this case is reopened, he says, actually, I didn't go to bed. Instead, what I really did was about an hour later, I came out of my house, I climbed up the tree that's in front of Martha's bedroom window. I threw rocks at her window. When she never came to the window, I decided to masturbate in the tree. And then
they're just trying to put the DNA all over the damn place.
I pulled my pants up and I went home. Okay? Now, obviously, these new stories placed both of the boys with Martha, with DNA at the scene.
Do you think, like, the person they hired told them to, like, make something up because we have to figure out a reason your DNA is going to be out there, you guilty little shits?
But here's the thing. They didn't have DNA at the scene. There wasn't the cops. They didn't...
Oh, they didn't do a good job.
Exactly.
Officer Dum-Dums.
So these guys went and told this story anticipating that they would have to cover the fact
so.
that there was DNA at the scene, but there was never DNA found at the scene. So now everybody's like, why are you telling this story? Everyone's super confused at this point. Like, this is 20 years later, or 15 years later, whatever it is later.
And he had sex with a tree.
And exactly. So the case is still considered cold, though, because there's no confession. There's no way to link these two guys, one of them or the other. There's only circumstantial evidence. So a former LAPD detective named Mark Furman, he completely tore this case apart. And he investigated it himself, and he wrote a book, just like Michelle McNamara did for I'll Be Gone in the Dark, for the Golden State Killer.
Everyone should listen to the audiobook of that. It was really good.
Well, this guy, Mark Furman, he wrote a book about this case, the Martha Moxley case. And he completely tore this investigation apart, and he tore it wide open. And because of his book, he concluded that the killer was not Tommy, but it was his younger brother, Michael Skakel. And this is a theory. The theory that he has was that after 11 p.m., Michael follows Martha into her yard. He grabs one of his golf clubs and he chases her with it. He hits her on the head, and then she gets knocked out. He grabs her by the ankles, drags her under the tree, and then beats her to death with the golf club. That's the theory that this guy who wrote the book, the LAPD detective that wrote this book, had. So now, the original prosecutor in the case, Donald Brown, he didn't have, like I said, enough evidence to convict anyone, and he was really criticized for not bringing this family to court because everyone said, you have enough circumstantial evidence, you have these guys changing their stories, like on purpose to put their DNA at the scene because they're too afraid that their DNA is going to be found at the scene. And he got super criticized. And when he did, he had decided to resign.
It's enough to at least go to trial.
Exactly. So another prosecutor that came up after this guy, Donald Brown, he decided to organize a grand jury and convict Michael Skakel, try Michael Skakel, which is the younger brother.
Now, can you convict, like, the dad for obstruction of justice and all that? Like, is that, like, a thing? Like, they all tried to cover this up.
I don't think that they can. I don't think that he actually did anything illegal to obstruct justice. I think it was the cops that were just afraid. So I don't think...
No, but he hired the people.
Well, he hired the investigator to investigate the investigation. I don't think he actually hired anyone to obstruct justice. So Michael Skakel was arraigned and he pleaded not guilty. And this was in 1990, I think, 1. Okay. He was arraigned, pleaded not guilty to this crime, and he maintained his innocence. There was a lot of opportunity for reasonable doubt. And he probably could have got off, but the DA or the prosecutor brought in 11 people from his rehab that he spent a lot of time in because he went to rehab for a long time. And apparently he told a bunch of people that he committed this crime in rehab. And so 11 people from his rehab that were other patients came and testified against him. For 5 weeks, this trial went on, and jurors, they were very confused about this case. A lot of them thought it was probably his brother, Tommy. There was a lot of evidence pointing to Tommy. The jurors were very confused, but the prosecutor had apparently, I wanted to look it up, but I didn't get a chance to. He had apparently an amazing closing argument, which convinced the jury, and the jury ended up deliberating for 3 days and then convicted Michael Skakel to 20 years to life.
Good for him. Get him.
Good for Michael.
Yeah, good for you, you piece of shit. I hope.
Well, you're going to get upset. So let me finish
a lot of people
story.
are having sex with you in jail unwillingly.
Well, he was in jail until 2013. After multiple appeals, he was let out on bail and waiting, and he ended up getting a mistrial. And the Connecticut Supreme Court reversed his conviction in 2016, and he's currently out today, and there is no sign of this case being reopened.
Connecticut should be revoked of their Supreme Court rights You shouldn't be allowed to have one because your Supreme Court is stupid.
So what the Supreme Court decided was that his lawyer in the original case in 1991...
Was very well paid, so they win.
No, the lawyer in 1991 didn't do a good job of representing him. And that's why the Supreme Court reversed the decision.
That's so stupid. Anytime you lose, your lawyer was worse than the other one.
I know. So
this
is my theory. To be honest,
I'm voting for president. # vote for Russ. I'm changing all of this. We're starting a new campaign. Vote for Russ. He's for us.
So her poor family is...
We're changing this.
Her poor family is convinced that Michael is the killer. I have to say, though, after reading everything, this is my... And let me just tell you one thing. First of all, I'm nobody. Second of all, I have no...
You're not nobody. That's terrible.
But I'm nobody important. Like, I don't have any criminology background, nothing.
I mean, you're no profiler.
Simply just reading all the evidence that I've read.
I'm profiler.
This is my theory of what I think could have happened. I think that she was with Tommy Skakel, the older brother, right? And I don't think they were necessarily messing around. I don't know if she wanted to mess around with him, but I think she was hanging out with him. And then Michael came home, and I think that Michael and Tommy committed this crime together.
I do too.
I don't know if Tommy, obviously someone, Michael or Tommy, tried to force themselves on her because her pants and her panties were down past her knees.
You know why I think they both did it? Because they both were trying to have reasons for their DNA being there.
Exactly.
So they both did it.
I think that Tommy might have tried to have sex with her. There was also a handprint found on her inner thigh.
How long do handprints last?
When you're dead...
There's no blood flowing.
Things tend to... Yeah. So there was a handprint found on her inner thigh, which made police officers think that someone was trying to pry her legs open. And she was fighting them. There was evidence of a struggle. But I don't know if we'll ever know who actually killed Martha Moxley.
We know.
But that's my theory. I think that the two boys were in on it together. I think that either Tommy did it and Michael helped cover it up, or Tommy did something and then Michael came and finished it, or somebody did something, but I don't think it was one or the other. I think it was the two of them.
Yeah, they both should be in jail getting raped by bigger men than them.
But they're not. They're out because...
They're out probably driving Lambos.
They have a family that protected them.
Illuminati stuff.
No, they just have money. They're rich people. In this country, if you have money and status, you get away with... You have privilege. We know how that is.
I don't, because I don't got no money.
Well, you don't, but we know how the justice system works. It's a sad case. So that was the case of Martha Moxley.
Another sad case.
And you know what? I really think...
I wonder if they still live in Greenwich.
No. So her father and mother moved to Annapolis, Maryland.
No, I was talking about
her father died.
The dudes that did it. Or the dudes we think that did it.
I'm not sure where they live now. I think they still live in Connecticut.
Hey, if anyone sees them in the street...
No one's going to see them in the street. They're super duper rich.
But if you do, and you see them at a bar, and you slap them... Put them on Instagram and
no one's gonna do that.
Slap the crap out of them and put it under #WeLikeRuss.
No one's gonna do that. But Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the original Robert Kennedy's son, wrote a book about how his cousin, Michael Skakel, was framed. And in this book, it details all the reasons why Michael Skakel is completely innocent of this crime, how he was framed. And Michael put a statement out when he got released that said, this is what his statement said, I wish that I could be the one that did this so that the Moxleys would have closure, but I'm not. I don't know who did this. I'm sorry that you don't have an answer, but I'm not the killer.
That's the best statement you could say.
And I hope you find an answer.
Yeah, you can't say nothing better than that. That almost sounds a little convincing, but from the things you said, the facts you gave me, it sounds like it was done.
It's like, why would you tell a story to put your DNA at the scene?
Who jerks off in a tree?
Exactly.
That was the first person of all time to ever masturbate in a tree.
I doubt that. I feel like there might be somebody else.
Maybe Michael
there.
Jackson. He used to climb trees.
So I'm going to go watch this Oxygen story because I'm interested. Like I said, I didn't watch it. I didn't listen to any podcasts about this case. I simply just researched everything online. So I'm really interested in watching what Oxygen's investigation came up with because I love the Oxygen channel. They have really good shows. So we should go watch it.
I would watch it if it wasn't 4 parts. That's a lot of watching.
No, it's 3 parts.
That's 2 more parts than I want to watch.
They're 45 minutes each.
You know I have a short attention span.
That's true.
Maybe I could watch like 1 and then fall asleep.
Okay. All right, everybody. Well, thank you for listening this week. Sorry I came out a couple days late, but, you know, we're working people over here. So
She tried to do a Bronx accent.
I did.
Fraud.
We're working people over here.
I'm working over here.
Follow us on Instagram, Wife of Crime Pod on Instagram.
Wife of Crime Pod. And hashtag we still like Russ.
Hashtag we still like Russ. Hashtag Jess is the best.
Womp womp. Just a hater.
Jess is the best. All right, have a good week. Bye.
Peace.